Hello and welcome all my listeners to my channel Learn Law Better #LLB. In this season of episodes, I will be discussing general introduction and origin of criminal law along with introduction and base of Indian Penal Code. So in the last episodes, I have discussed about origin of criminal law and we were discussing development of modern criminal law in India. And in today's session, I will be discussing the Regulating Act of 1773. As you all know that it was an act passed by the British Parliament to control and regulate the affairs of the East India Company in India. It was the first parliamentary intervention in the company's territorial matters and marked the beginning of a takeover process that was completed in 1858. Some of the main provisions of the Act were it appointed a Governor General and four councillors for Bengal, who would also have authority over other presidencies like Madras and Bombay. And as you all know, that in the previous session I have discussed the scheme of justice adopted by Warren Hastings, who was the first Governor General. This act also limited the company's dividends to 6% until it repaid a loan of 1.5 million pounds to the British government. It prohibited the company's servants from engaging in private trade and accepting bribes from the natives. It established a Supreme Court of Judicature at Calcutta, consisting of a Chief Justice and three other judges to administer justice to the British subjects in India. It required the company to send copies of all its correspondence and documents related to its administration in India to the British government. The act was intended to improve the governance and finances of the company, but it also faced several criticisms and drawbacks. And some of them were it created conflicts and confusion between the Governor General and his councillors, who often had opposing views and interests. It did not address the grievances and rights of the Indian princes and people who were exploited and oppressed by the company's policies. It did not prevent corruption and maladministration by the company's officials who found ways to evade or manipulate the regulations. It also provoked resentment and resistance from the company's shareholders and directors who felt their autonomy and profits were threatened by the government's interface. There were some of the reforms that were introduced by Warren Hastings as Governor General during this tenure. So, Warren Hastings introduced several reforms in various fields of administration during his tenure as Governor General, and some of them were he abolished the dual system of administration that was established by Robert Clive and took over the direct responsibility of civil and criminal justice along with revenue collection in Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. He reduced the pension of the Nawab of Bengal and stopped paying tribute to the Mughal emperor. He reorganized the revenue administration by setting up a board of revenue at Calcutta, appointing British collectors for each district, moving the treasury from Murshidabad to Calcutta, and abolishing unreasonable fines and restrictions on rent. He also introduced a 5 year settlement of land revenue under which the land was auctioned to the highest bidder for a fixed period. He reformed the judicial system by establishing civil and criminal courts at the district level, presided by British collectors and Indian judges respectively. He also set up two appellate courts at Calcutta, one for civil cases, Sadar Diwani Adalat, and one for criminal cases, Sadar Nizamat Adalat, with the Chief Justice and three other judges. He tried to codify the Hindu and Muslim laws with the help of Indian Pandits and Maulvis. He encouraged the study and promotion of Indian languages, literature, and culture as well. He supported Sir William Jones in founding the Asiatic Society of Bengal in the year 1784, which aimed to conduct research on Indian history, arts, and sciences. He also patronized Indian scholars and poets like Bharat Chandra Rai and Ghulam Hussain Khan Tabatabai. He himself learned Urdu and Persian and translated some Indian works into English. And then came the Amendment of Regulating Act. As the Regulating Act of 1773 was the first parliamentary act to regulate the affairs of the East India Company in India, however, it had several flaws and shortcomings that led to conflicts and confusion between the Governor General and his council. The Supreme Court and the provincial courts and the British and the Indians. Therefore, the British Parliament passed another act in the year 1781 to correct these defects and clarify some provisions of the Regulating Act. This act was known as the Amending Act of 1781 or the Declaratory Act of 1781. Some of the main features of this act were it defined the relationship between the Supreme Court and the Governor General in Council and limited the jurisdiction of the former to cases involving British subjects only. It also exempted the servants of the company from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court for their official acts. It declared that all the acts done by the Governor General in Council in good faith and for public interest were valid and lawful, even if they were inconsistent with any law or usage in India. It also indemnified Warren Hastings and his council from any legal action for their past acts. It empowered the Governor General to overrule his council in matters of war and peace and to correspond directly with the Court of Directors in London. It also gave him a casting vote in case of a tie in the council. It authorized the company to establish a new court of appeal at Calcutta called the Court of Circuit to hear appeals from the provincial courts in civil cases. It also allowed appeals from the provincial courts to Sadar Diwani Adalat in Calcutta. So, this was the Regulating Act of 1773. What were the shortcomings? What were the major scheme that was adopted by Warren Hastings? What was the role of Warren Hastings? And what were the shortcomings? And what was the Amending Act of 1781? So, in this episode, it was enough for today. And in the coming episodes, I will be discussing some another major developments of modern criminal law in India. And then we will move to the elements of mental elements of crime that is mentioned in the Indian Penal Code. And then we will start the Indian Penal Code. So, that's all for today. Thank you so much. And do subscribe the channel.